Coming in at number 5 we have Titan Triggerfish. These fish are known to be quite aggressive to their prey, and they tend to bite divers who come too close to their nests. These fish are among the largest species of triggerfish, and they are commonly found in lagoons and at reefs deep in the ocean, stretching from Australia to Thailand. Their diet consists of sea urchins, crustaceans, tube worms, and coral. It often feeds by turning over rocks, stirring up sand, and biting off pieces of branching coral. They don't typically feed on other fish, but they've been observed being aggressive and attacking other fish who enter their territory. Along with being aggressive, naturally they get extremely aggressive during the reproduction season when the female is guarding its nest, which is placed in a flat and sandy area and looks roughly cone-shaped. If you dive down and come in contact with the female fish near her nest, it will defend its eggs at all costs, often exposing its erect dorsal spine and swimming rapidly towards you to attack. It is suggested to swim horizontally away from the danger zone rather than going up to the surface right away. Triggerfish can grow up to 30 inches, and their size and oval shape make them very recognizable, along with their threatening looking teeth, and have evolved as an apex predator within their natural habitat. If you're on vacation and are planning to go scuba diving or snorkeling, be careful not to swim near coral reefs because they tend to swim around there, and if you get too close they will attack and bite you. The Titan triggerfish bites are not venomous, they are extremely painful and can cause serious injury. Coming in at number 4 we have flower urchin. Yes, it has a nice name, but it is anything but that. It is considered to be the most dangerous urchin in the world. This urchin has flower-like patterning and are usually a pinkish white to yellowish white colouring with a central purple dot, and that's how it got its beautiful name. They tend to live in coral reefs, seagrass, and sandy environments lower down towards the ocean floor, and it feeds on algae, bryozoans, and organic detritus, and can grow to a maximum diameter of 15 to 20 centimeters. They reside from Japan all the way to Australia and in the Red Sea to the East African coast. Flower urchins are among the numerous species of sea urchins known as collector urchins, and they often cover their upper body with debris from their surroundings to camouflage from others. They're usually covered in objects like dead coral fragments, shells, seaweeds, and rocks. If you just simply touch this creature, it can deliver excruciatingly painful stings that can result in hospitalization. It can cause paralysis of the tongue, lips, eyes, and muscles, faintness, difficulty breathing, and the inability to speak. A scientist named Tsutomu Fujiwara, who was once stung by the flower urchin, described feeling like he was going to die. So when in the ocean, beware of your surroundings and make sure not to touch this urchin. Another account of someone being stung by these dangerous creatures was the drowning of a pearl diver after being rendered unconscious from accidental contact with a flower urchin. Again, if you're going to be swimming, snorkeling, or deep sea diving in the ocean, be very careful you don't come into contact with these beautiful yet dangerous creatures. Coming in at number 3 we have the blue ringed octopus. This creature is beautiful looking and easily recognizable due to their yellow skin and blue and black rings, but it's one of the deadliest species of small octopus in the ocean, and scientists have even classified them as one of the world's most dangerous animals. To the eye, this creature is beautiful, but their blue and black rings around their bodies change dramatically when they become threatened. Despite only being 5 to 8 inches in size, their venom is extremely powerful and can be very dangerous to humans if they're provoked. If stung, it can result in a number of things such as nausea, respiratory arrest, heart failure, blindness, total body paralysis, and can lead to death within a few minutes if not treated, or could cause drowning due to the results of the venom, and the inability to swim to the surface. In order to come in contact with the creature's venom, you would have to come into direct contact with the octopus. When faced with danger, the octopus's first instinct is to flee, but if the threat persists, they will then go into a defensive stance and display its blue rings. If the octopus is cornered or touched, the person would be in danger of being bitten and stung by its deadly venom. They are named one of the deadliest sea creatures for a reason, because despite them being such a small animal, they carry enough venom in their bodies to kill up to 26 humans within just a few minutes. These terrifying sea creatures feed crabs, shrimp, and other small animals. They reside in tide pools and coral reefs in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, from Japan to Australia, and their species tend to only live around 2 to 3 years, but this may vary based on their nutrition, temperature, and intensity of light. Be extremely careful when in the ocean. Be sure to watch out for these terrifying creatures. They would be easy to see due to their bright colours, but if spotted, swim away fast before you get attacked. Coming in at number 2, the box jellyfish. This is a species of jellyfish that usually tops the list of the most dangerous sea creatures in the world, and the world's most venomous creature. At first look, its appearance isn't too threatening, but if stung, it is life-threatening. The sting can result in death in less than 5 minutes. The most recent death from a box jellyfish sting was in February 2021 to a man who passed away 10 days after being stung while swimming at Cape York Beach in Australia. Before that, the last known fatality was in 2007, and total of 79 deaths since the first report in 1883, and that's just in Australia alone. In the Philippines, there are far more fatalities, with up to 40 deaths annually. In Thailand, after a man died in 2014 from a box jellyfish sting, they enhanced their first aid stations on beaches, but yet the next year 2 more fatalities occurred due to this deadly sea creature. Unlike some jellyfish, the box jellyfish can swim, which means they're capable of hunting for prey and can move through the ocean at a very fast pace of up to 8 miles per hour. They actively hunt their prey, which tend to be smaller fish and invertebrates including prawns and bait fish. Unfortunately, the box jellyfish has many enemies like crabs, different species of turtles, rabbitfish, batfish and butterfish, but their swift swimming and venomous stings help themselves stay alive. An interesting fact about box jellyfish is that in Hawaii, the number of box jellyfish peak after a full moon, which is apparently when they come near the shore to spawn. So if you're thinking of going for a swim in the ocean during a beautiful full moon, I'd advise to just wait until the next day, because you don't want to ruin a nice vacation with a fatal box jellyfish sting. No one wants to ruin a vacation by dying. That would suck. And finally, in at number 1, we have cone snail. Just by looking at this little snail sitting in its shell, you wouldn't think it would be dangerous or harmful at all. Their shells are beautiful looking, with colourful and complex patterns on its shell, but don't be fooled, you should never handle this snail. It is one of the most venomous sea snails in the ocean. There are over 600 species of these cone snails all around the world, and they are extremely toxic. The most dangerous species to humans are the slightly larger ones, but pretty much all cone snails are capable of stinging if handled or stepped on, and can be very fatal to humans. Cone snails use a hypodermic needle-like modified radula tooth, and their toxic venom gland is used to attack and paralyze their prey instantly before eating them. The tooth is hollow and barbed and is attached to the tip of the radula inside the snail's throat. When the snail detects an animal nearby that it wants to feed on, it extends a long flexible tube called a proboscis towards their prey, and the radula tooth is loaded with their toxic venom from their venom bulb and is fired into the prey by a powerful muscular contraction. It's like gleeking. They tend to be found in all tropical and subtropical seas in deep areas near rocks and coral reefs. These toxic creatures are carnivorous and predatory, and they feed on small bottom-dwelling fish, marine worms and even other cone snails. If you're going to swim in the ocean, you shouldn't really ever come in contact with these venomous creatures due to them living on the ocean floor. But if they ever wash up on the shore, be careful if you're collecting shells from your vacation, and make sure you don't pick up any cone shells just in case there's a snail living inside, because it could be deadly. Only 1 drop of their venom can kill up to 20 people. So when swimming in the oceans, be careful and watch out for all these deadly creatures. This is why I never go in the ocean. Everything wants to kill you.
Number 5. Dagon and the Deep Ones. Coming up first on our list is a multifaceted entry with Dagon and the deep ones who worship him. They kinda go together. What is a deep one? It's not a sea monster that went to first year philosophy and is always trying to wax poetic, but rather a deep one refers to a race of amphibious, humanoid-like-ish sea creatures closely resembling creatures like frogs or axolotls. If you've ever seen Hellboy's Abe Sapien or the monster from Shape of Water, those monsters are actually a pretty good representation for what a deep one should look like. Deep ones get their name from their homes, deep beneath the sea, obviously, where they live out their cold, often miserable lives. When deep ones do venture to the surface, they do so to sweep humans under their influence, promising them riches in exchange for worship, sometimes even mating with them, creating disgusting hybrid deep ones. And first and foremost, to ingratiate them into the cult of Dagon, worshipping their master, Dagon, a massive deep one of fantastic power. Dagon appears in the short story appropriately named Dagon, which is also a great jumping on point if you've ever been curious about reading H.P. Lovecraft and you didn't know where to start. It's one of the first appearances of any of the Lovecraft monsters at all. Dagon is worshipped by humans and deep ones in equal measure, no doubt thanks to his influence. Dagon is immortal, massive, and commands a lot of respect. It's unknown what the full extent of Dagon's power is, but given that he's an immortal sea monster with dominion over a race of pelagic nightmares that do his every bidding, let's assume that if he really wanted to stir up trouble, it would not be that difficult for him. Just ask the town of Innsmouth how they feel about their master. They've got nothing but positive things to say, I'm sure. And hey, while I got you here, if you're liking what we do, we'd always appreciate a subscribe our way, and you'll catch the best horror videos in your inbox every single day. Number 4, the Shoggoths. A Shoggoth or a Shoggoth, I'm really not sure, which does sound a bit like something a 1920s chimney sweep might yell at you to get off. Hey, Shoggoth is a disgusting, writhing mess of iridescent black slime and a sea of eyeballs engineered by the Elder Things to function as a race of tools for their will, as they're mostly used for undersea construction. They're amorphous, shape-shifting monstrosities, able to mock and reflect all matter of organ and life. A Shoggoth is capable of molding itself however it needs to see fit to accomplish its dark dealings, which make them the perfect tools for the Elder Things. Now, the first generation of Shoggoths were brainless husks, solely driven to appease their masters. But over the eons of their existence, the Shoggoths began to mutate and develop a low form of consciousness, eventually rising up and overthrowing the Elder Things altogether and working for themselves to build their own cities, where they now reside in their city in Antarctica, poorly imitating their old masters, shrieking Tikali over and over, an old rallying cry the Elder Things would shout at the Shoggoths to get them to work. Poor little amorphous shape-shifting monstrosities. Now, although a Shoggoth was intended to serve mostly as a being for construction, they're not without their abilities. A Shoggoth is hulkingly strong, capable of crushing a human in seconds, and they're known for using their brute strength to solve problems in their way. For example, the Shoggoth that makes an appearance in the Mountains of Madness crushes an entire rookery of penguins that was in its way beneath its mighty weight. While the Shoggoths don't seem to have any higher goals or aspirations, they've shown themselves to be threatening enough that if crossed, you'll regret ever dismissing them as nothing more than tools. Number 3, Yogsopath. Yogsopath is colloquially known as the Defiler and is more properly known as the god of depravity and perversion, which is just about the worst way you can introduce yourself on a first date. Yogsopath isn't just into human perversions, oh no. This wretched great one has its sights set on something much bigger than anything our little human brains could conjure up. Yogsopath is after depravity on an incomprehensible scale. That's a word that gets thrown around a lot in the Lovecraft mythos, incomprehensible. Yogsopath's true form is unknown, as it seems to exist in a state outside of a physical body. But when it's looking to pursue some of its disgusting pleasures, it always acquires a human host. And when it takes a human host, it warps its body into a wretched, grotesquely obese form, lacking a head or a neck, and featuring a mouth in the palm of both hands. And I cannot imagine that it is getting up to anything good with those palms. Yogsopath is unlike most other great ones in that it's capable of directly speaking to humans in plain old English instead of indecipherable guttural noises. Its ability to speak English and communicate is what helps it to pursue its dark goals, as it seeks out humans who read perverse and forbidden literature, and it doesn't just hunt 50 Shades of Grey fans. It plants seeds of interest in human minds to research and eventually manipulating curious enough humans to read from the Revelation of Glocki, a cursed book containing Yogsopath's name. When read, it will be summoned. When Yogsopath is summoned, it makes its guests an offer, offering to make the summoner into a priest of Yogsopath, welcoming them into its service. It's best to accept this gracious offer, as a rejection will offend Yogsopath deeply, leading to the summoner to become its next meal. Unfortunate for you, but either way, Yogsopath is very pleased with the outcome. Either it gets a new servant for its life, or it gets a nice little midday snack. Number 2, Arlotep. Now, Arlotep is one of the most sinister entities in all of the Lovecraft pantheon, and one of the most popular beings as well, appearing across several stories in the universe, both by Lovecraft and other authors over the years. Arlotep first appears in the short story, Arlotep, which is also another great jumping on point for new Lovecraft fans who want to get into the lore somewhere and don't know where to start. It's pretty self-contained. Arlotep is unique in the pantheon for several reasons, but first and foremost is its freedom. Arlotep isn't trapped under the sea or in the stars like Cthulhu or Yogsopath, but rather enjoys the freedom of the earth as it wanders. It usually likes taking the form of a man, wandering as a tall, joyous, friendly man, all the better for it to influence people with. It's said that Arlotep has thousands upon thousands of forms and manifestations, and we can probably safely assume that most of them are horrifying and sanity destroying. Arlotep could actually be described as the most human-like of any of the elder gods, which makes it all the more threatening. It's able to sway humans easily, gathering cults of personality around it. The original short story in which it appears, Nyarlathotep is gaining influence over the populations by wandering the world, performing incredible miracles, claiming to have lived for 27 centuries, winning over the hearts and minds of legions of followers willing to devote themselves completely for Nyarlathotep's will. Now, Nyarlathotep seems to take a sickening pleasure in driving humans to madness. For Nyarlathotep, death isn't the end game, but manipulating and twisting humans, driving them to insanity, that's the thrill. I guess it gets pretty boring being an unending, unstoppable power beyond the stars. You gotta find something to keep the day exciting, right? Merely being around Nyarlathotep is enough to make a man sick. Nyarlathotep isn't the absolute most powerful entity in the mythos, but it is definitely one of the most nefarious and threatening. Number 1, Yogsopath. Oh, it doesn't even feel good saying that coming out of the throat. I shouldn't be talking about stuff like this. This is above my pay grade. Yogsopath is a horrifying, unfathomably powerful god, and one of the most powerful gods in the whole mythos. If there's one big takeaway from H.P. Lovecraft's mythos, it's that there's always bigger fish up the food chain. We are so insignificant compared to everything else in the cosmos, but we think ourselves so important. We, the beastly fools of mankind, are dwarfed by the radiant greatness of Cthulhu, but Cthulhu himself is dwarfed by creatures like Yogsopath. Yogsopath, or Yogi as his close friends like to call him, is the embodiment of all time and space across the multiverse. Yogsopath, like most gods in the Lovecraft pantheon, is an indescribable horror beyond human comprehension, and like Nyarlathotep, is known to be able to manifest and take several avatars to better serve its needs. But its most common form is described as that of being a massive, fractally glowing green orbs that continuously merge, separate, and regrow in an unending, spiraling sea of tentacles, tendrils, and eyes. Yogsopath sees all. As the manifestation of time and space across the multiverse, there is nothing that can escape its gaze. It's wise to the entirety of all knowledge. It tempts humans by offering to impart that knowledge to those foolish enough to try and take advantage of that offer, who'll then have their lives utterly destroyed by madness after seeking its favor. The mere sight of Yogsopath in its natural form is enough to destroy the human brain irreparably. Now, Yogsopath's goals are just utterly beyond our understanding. It can't even be truly said that Yogsopath is evil in the manner we understand. Our ideas of morality and good and evil just wouldn't register to a being like this. We're just too small to even begin to comprehend the horrors of the multiverse. And it's best we don't, because the more you try to study something like this, the more your obsession grows, and the more you seal your own fate.
Number 5, the Lernian Hydra. I'm no Hercules per se. Yeah, nothing. But thankfully, actually, because those are pretty big shoes to fill. Because that dude had to be brave beyond just like deep breaths and good pep talks. Guy had to literally fight like a 10-story condo building. How does one dude equipped with a club and a sword kill a 10-story building with teeth and 3 heads? Well, 5 heads. Well, 10 heads. Depending on how many you cut off, I guess. I guess that's why his name will be remembered and mine will be lost at sea. I guess he was a demigod, half powerful, half regular. A little unfair. By the way, which Hercules did you grow up on? I grew up on the Disney version, and Kevin Sorbo. Ugh, what a hunk. But there's been a lot, including the ancient real guy. She's known as simply the Hydra. As a serpentine water monster in Greek and Roman mythology, it's terrifying. Its lair was at the Lake of Lerna, also known to be the entrance of the underworld. Yikes. In the myth, the monster is killed by Hercules, as the second of his 12 labors. Okay, so this guy did it and then went on to go and do like 10 more. 10-0. Like, how hard can it be, right? I mean, it does have multiple heads. Yeah, it does have that. Also, apparently has poisonous breath and blood so violent that its scent is even deadly. Later versions of the Hydra story added regeneration to the monster's abilities too, so it can just start growing heads back at will. For every head chopped off, the Hydra would regrow 2 heads. So every time the Meg bites a head, 2 more. Another 2 are growing. Yeah, good thing this thing was hungry and swallows whales whole, because that's gonna be a lot of protein. Number 4, Jormungandr. Keeping it in the mythology department, we head up a little north. Jormungandr, aka huge monster, also known as the Midgard Serpent or the World Serpent. It is a sea serpent and the middle child of Loki and giantess Angrboda. And those middle children, huh? Always the problem, kids. I would know. I am one. According to the prose Edda, Odin took Loki's 3 children by Angrboda, Fenrir, Hel, and Jormungandr, and tossed Jormungandr into the great ocean. The serpent grew so large that it was able to surround the entire earth and grasp it in its own tail, as it's referred to as, well, the World Serpent. And apparently, when it releases its tail, Ragnarok will begin. Yeah, basically a destruction to the end of the world. Yeah, all this rich history is so heavy and gloomy, isn't it? Isn't there like the sun will shine like California for all to enjoy? Like, where's that written down? Nowhere, huh? Just cataclysms and monsters. Jormungandr's arch enemy is the thunder god Thor. And apparently a Megalodon too. Cause let's face it, a giant serpent versus a 4-story great white, it would definitely be a good fight. I think if Thor showed up and started smashing up both, it would literally be the best Marvel Universe movie yet. Another encounter comes when Thor goes fishing with the giant Hymir. When Hymir refuses to provide Thor with bait, he strikes the head off Hymir's largest ox to use as his bait. Okay, easy, Roid Rage. Sheesh. They row to a point where Hymir fishes, he prepares his fishing line and a large hook and baits it with the ox head, which Jormungandr bites. Thor then yanks the serpent up from the water and the two throw hands. Okay, so it sounds like it isn't that big. I mean, it's huge, but the wrapping around the planet has got my dimensions off. Maybe it was like a metric versus imperial thing back then. I don't know, what do you think? Comment down below who would win, because when it gets into mystical powers and stuff, it becomes a little unfairly matched, no? Number 3, Cthulhu. Come on, we know this guy. Now this would be a good fight. This is sort of fathomable. Well, kinda. An extinct shark versus a made-up ender of worlds. Cool, let's do that. Basically a giant humanoid octopus dragon versus the Carcharaslus Megalodon, a triplex-size apex predator. It's definitely gonna be in Vegas, and pay-per-view, I'll tell you that for free. Cthulhu is a fictional cosmic horror entity thought up by the twisted mind of cosmic horror writer H.P. Lovecraft. First introduced in his short story called The Call of Cthulhu, published by the American pulp magazine Weird Tales in 1928. He's like the first creature Lovecraft pondered up. He's terrifying. He's supposed to bring Armageddon upon us when he wakes up from the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, again, not all sunshine and rainbows with these stories. Actually, like, ever with these stories. Cthulhu is a great old one, almost the god of all gods in these stories. All these characters intertwine, and apparently he's our last call. Lovecraft depicts it as a gigantic entity worshipped by cultists in the shape of a green octopus dragon humanoid bipedal creature. And it's like 10 stories high. Yeah, like massive. Like us looking at toy army men. The Lovecraft universe, aka the Cthulhu mythos, its appearance alone is enough to haunt your dreams. Lovecraft describes this guy as a face full of octopus-like feelers, a scaly, rubbery-looking body, sharp claws on its hands and feet, and of course, dragon's wings. So it can fly and swim. In other words, the worst thing you can imagine. Yeah. Cthulhu can fly, which he has on the Meg, for sure. And also, the mind control, I don't know how sharks' brains works, but Cthulhu gets in there, yeah, you're in trouble, Sharky. Number 2, the Leviathan. Okay, so we're diving into some very sacred texts now, the Bible. In said pieces of scripture, there's a tale of a giant creature that could swallow up cities, apparently, and is also an awesome roller coaster at Canada's Wonderland. Gotta try it if you haven't been on it yet. This twisty, turny, vicious monster was actually modeled after this twisty, turny, vicious monster, the Leviathan, the second of the great monsters described in the book of Job. This Leviathan is an absolute unit of a sea monster who's impervious to literally any human weapon. I mean, what were the weapons back then though? Like bows and arrows, swords maybe, little pokey things, you know? It's not gonna do much. Apparently locusts too, yeah, those are terrifying. This Leviathan breathes fire. It emits smoke from its nostrils, and it's related to another ancient monster called Loten, a 7-headed giant serpent who's represented as pure chaos. I mean, what Bible creature isn't terrifying though? Was this giant sea snake a water dragon? Because apparently it's something like 300 miles long according to the Bible. So it's like Jormungandr territory, but longer. Maybe it's the same creature, told by 2 different peoples? Mind blown. Again, the Megalodon I think would just chomp this thing and dive deep down to the Twilight Zone and it's lights out. We've seen Jaws, right? Yeah, picture that but like 40 times the size. Yeah, we're gonna need a bigger boat. Number 1, Godzilla. I had to, obviously, we're having fun here today. Godzilla, yes, of course, the king of kings, aka kaiju, originates from a series of Japanese films. The character first appeared in the 1954 film Godzilla and became a worldwide pop culture icon ever since. Appearing in a ton of different media, 32 films, 4 American films, video games, novels, comic books, TV shows, you name it. Godzilla has been, like I said, the king of all monsters. Of course, a phrase first used in Godzilla, King of Monsters. Godzilla is enormous. It's destructive. It's a prehistoric sea monster awakened and empowered by nuclear radiation. With the nuclear incidents of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the Lucky Dragon 5 incident, Godzilla doesn't really like nukes. Yeah. The amphibious reptilian monster is basically based around a concept of a dinosaur, erect, standing up, very tall. Of course, a bony plated back and tail, and let's not forget the special abilities Godzilla has as well. Atomic heat beams, or as I like to call it, stank breath. Dude had tonsil stones so bad, nuclear energy generates from them. Well, not really, but inside of his body using electromagnetic force to concentrate it into a laser radioactive beam. Amphibious, of course, so it swims and breathes underwater, which is gonna come in handy. Immune to conventional weapons and can regenerate. Yeah. And it's massive. Of course, Godzilla was said to average around 150 feet tall. In the American version, Godzilla is like 400 feet tall. Like, just a little bit bigger. This is kind of a no-brainer here, obviously, right? This little sunfish would have nothing on the king.
Number 5, SCP-1128. Number 5 on our list, 1128, is a terrifying entity that manifests itself as a colossal aquatic predator. It's sometimes described as a being similar to a shark, only in a more grotesque and twisted appearance, with common descriptions across all sightings being a mouth full of teeth. The entity manifests itself as an aquatic predator to anyone who is given a full description of the beast's appearance, either through a written description or a spoken description, so sorry for describing it. Few surviving subjects have described it as resembling a massive monstrous deformed shark. Once a subject is exposed to detailed knowledge of 1128, they become infected by its latent psychic ability, forming a connection. From here, no immediate abnormal changes in behavior or occurrences are present, with the only notable variance being a hesitation to enter bodies of water, for good reason too. Once an exposed subject submerges themselves completely in water, they are caught by 1128. Any submerged water is enough. Subjects are taken mysteriously to an ocean, the location of which is redacted by the Foundation. From here, you are hunted by SCP-1128. The Foundation patrols this unmarked ocean in a desperate attempt to contain the creature and protect anyone unfortunate enough to be caught in its trap. It's difficult to interview subjects after an exposure, as any detailed description of the encounter does run the risk of contaminating more Foundation members. Should a member or subject become infected by SCP-1128, treatment is immediately advised, with Class C amnesiacs being used to try and block memory of the entity. So, maybe for your sake and my sake, try to forget number 5 entirely, for your own safety. Now, the Foundation does advise that if you've been enjoying the content that we produce, you should toss a subscribe our way. Number 4, SCP-1451. SCP-1451 is an odd one, even by Foundation standards. SCP-1451 presents itself as a set of 26 metal statues at the bottom of the ocean. All appear to be statues of children of varying heights. The statues are all standing in a circle, holding each other's hands and facing outwards in a ring formation. Should any object, living or otherwise, with a mass greater than 40 grams enter into the ring, SCP-1451 begins to animate. The statues will shift themselves in a counterclockwise movement. Their hands will raise and lower slightly, and bubbles can be seen protruding from their mouths. Once it becomes fully animated, SCP-1451 displays advanced strength and tactics, being reported to use various martial arts to dispatch targets, pressure point application on humans, and precise strikes on machinery. They move in perfect unison and coordination, with some speculation that they operate on some level of hive mind mentality across the 26 individual entities. Once SCP-1451 has begun its hunt, it will not rest until it is disposed of whatever invaded its territory. The Foundation refers to 3 states of SCP-1451. Class 1 is the initial ring of statues in its inert state, Class 2 is the slight animation and bubbling seen present, and a Class 3 situation is when an active hunt has begun. To try and prevent a Class 3 situation, the SCP Foundation has installed a sphere of wire mesh netting to ensure nothing too large enters the ring. Natural water currents and oceanic movement aren't to be obstructed. instructed. The creature does need to eat sometimes. Number 3. SCP-835. SCP-835 manifests itself as a large cluster of polyps resembling a species of coral, although it's significantly larger than any discovered species of coral. The center mass of the cluster is a very large oval with 3-meter long polyps at each end. SCP-835 does not move, instead anchoring itself to the ocean floor using heaving tentacles that protrude from the polyps. The tentacles are coated in an adhesive substance and have been shown to be incredibly strong, capable of damaging bulkheads and steel. The coral base of SCP-835 is extremely durable and resistant to most attempts to collect any tissue samples, with the Foundation having to use high-powered diamond drill bits to collect even small samples of DNA. SCP-835 emits a large mass of semi-liquid material several times a day from each polyp. The toxic substance appears to be a mixture of digested solids, fecal matters, several bacteria, viruses, and parasites, with many sequences having originated only from 835. So what exactly makes SCP-835 so threatening? Well, sample reports from SCP-835 have shown that it's comprised almost exclusively of human DNA. Its hard shell seems to be recycled tooth enamel, its tentacles matching human flesh. A level 4 clearance declassified document from the Foundation detailed an encounter with an underwater isolation team, in which 2 members of the isolation team were swallowed by SCP-835, pulled in by its tentacles deep underneath what they had initially thought to be a cave, but realized was the contents of SCP-835's stomach. The crew members reported descending deeper and deeper, spending up to 72 hours inside the creature's digestive tract, the insides of its intestines lined with remnants of unfortunate victims, claiming that they had been morphed into flesh, and there was a wall of faces crying for release. Eventually, one of the crew members was released, though after significant breaches to its suit, unfortunately, he had to be let go from the Foundation. We thank him for his service. Number 2. SCP-1092. SCP-1092 presents itself as a class of Asteichthyes fish, and when the creature is matured, it resembles any number of other ocean-dwelling fish, with the only notable variance being its increased aggressive behavior, attacking prey. It's difficult for the Foundation to study, as only adult specimens can be studied, as in its juvenile phase, SCP-1092 are parasites birthed from a living host. Once SCP-1092 infects the bloodstream of its host, absorbing nutrients directly from the host's blood. Once exposed, the parasites initially are but a few millimeters in most its size, but grow many times their size, with the largest extracted one on record being 2.1 centimeters. There is insufficient data on how SCP-1092 infects its hosts. The current research data theorizes that minuscule eggs makes its way into the body through small cuts and scrapes, which would explain the fish's violent tendencies. Those infected by SCP-1092 report fatigue, weight loss, and increased appetite, and in many cases report a feeling of something fluttering or squirming inside the body. However, this is not present in all cases, as there are reported case files of hosts not experiencing any visible symptoms whatsoever until the parasite has unfortunately matured to its adult aquatic stage. Once the parasites have matured, the now adolescent creature will try to forcibly remove themselves from the physical body of their host, using their sharp teeth to cut through blood vessels and skin. Subjects at this stage will sustain injuries, severe blood loss, and in some cases worse. Thankfully, the SCP Foundation has effectively secured SCP-1092, keeping it housed in a completely watertight cell, where it is given the occasional domestic pig to act as a host for its reproductive cycle. Poor little piggy. Thank you, piggy. Thank you, Foundation. Number 1. SCP-3000. SCP-3000 is one of the most powerful SCPs currently being monitored by the Foundation. SCP-3000 is a Class 8 cognitohazardous entity and is a Level 5 classified document. I really shouldn't even be talking to you about this, but it's good to get this information out there. It is a massive, massive aquatic sea serpent that closely resembles a moray eel, only gigantic. There's been significant difficulty in efforts in trying to document its true size, but it is estimated to be anywhere between 600 and 900 kilometers in length, with its head measuring roughly 2.5 meters wide and its body as large as 10 meters in diameter. SCP-3000, thankfully, is typically a sedentary creature, not moving much at all, usually only responding to feeding. The majority of its body rarely moves. SCP-3000 has been known to be carnivorous, and when it hunts, it has been known to move exceedingly quickly. Fascinatingly, despite its gargantuan size, SCP-3000 does not appear to need sustenance to maintain its body's function, and thus its digestive process is unknown. Although complicating matters slightly is a process wherein SCP-3000 disperses a thin layer of viscous dark gray sludge through its skin whilst it consumes its prey. It doesn't stop there though. SCP-3000 has been recognized to cause severe mental damage in those who research it. Direct observation and study has been proven to cause mental alteration in Foundation researchers, experiencing paranoia, fear, anxiety, memory loss, and most worryingly, inexplicable severe headaches. It's unknown how SCP-3000 causes this, but the theories are that it has a latent psychic ability. There are some who believe SCP-3000 could be an old god that has found its way into our world. The creature is too immense to be contained in any Foundation facility, instead being kept in a clandestine area of the Bay of Bengal, in an area barred from the public, routinely patrolled and surrounded by Foundation vessels. Be extremely thankful that the brave members of the Foundation are researching and containing this. Secure, contain, protect. Those are the goals of the Foundation.